Good news, huh? God knows that's good news. I'm going to set this down. I don't want to put it too far away. I'm going to set it right here. I like to mess up the next speaker, right? Well, Denise and I kind of joke sometimes about that idea. You know, you're trying to figure something out. Why did this happen? You know, it's like, well, God knows. You know, it's sort of dismissive. You know, it's like you don't have to think any further because it's the grand mystery. You know, you can just chalk it up to a higher understanding, and in the moment that is escaping you. But we joke and we say, God knows, but God ain't saying right now. You know, so it's like, oh, back to trust, surrender, faith. That's what I want to talk about today, because I don't know about you, but sometimes things happen and I get tweaked. Do you? And I get a little concerned about how life is unfolding, you know, macro and micro perspective. I think, you know, why we come to places like this and why we do our spiritual work is because we really do hit walls sometimes of understanding. I mean, even if we're smart, even if we do all the research, even if we have Chat GPT on speed dial, which I do, I'm just using it all the time. But I can't, it won't answer some of the questions that I pose to it. It still, you know, says something like, maybe go see your clergy or go read some spiritual book, because the answer is not in this mundane world of facts. It just isn't. And yet we don't want to live with a sense of discomfort with not knowing. So is it possible to not know, not have the answers, sort of live with a lot of uncertainty and still have peace of mind? Isn't that what we're called to do? And you know, I mean, this is not a new problem. It isn't as if from time immemorial, you know, people have been asking this question and sort of seeking that place of comfort in the midst of the uncertainty of life, because life has always been uncertain. I mean, the unfolding of events and everything is, you know, is only vaguely predictable, right? And then oftentimes those predictions don't even come to pass. And in fact, sometimes they can be like 180 degrees different than what the best minds have suggested they would be. Denise and I were watching this Nostradamus special the other day, and I don't know if you know, Nostradamus supposedly was this great soothsayer and predicted all these great events, and they've gone through and they found things that he said that, you know, have come to pass, or at least they sort of fit in, you know, categorically into the description. And there's a real desire. I mean, you know, we would love to be able to predict the future. We think, right? Because not knowing, what does it feel like when we don't know? What's the felt experience of not knowing? Uncertainty. And what feeling goes with uncertainty? Anxiety, right? Fear, anxiety. I mean, these are not wonderful emotions, right? So we're trying to avoid that discomfort that goes along with uncertainty. So what's the antidote to uncertainty that will give us a different experience? Yes, but before we go there, because then I'd have to wrap it up in 5 minutes, and you guys would be eating soup in 5 minutes. Not bad. So I wrote a few things down. Can I share them with you? As long as we're here, might as well. Search for meaning. So remember Viktor Frankl? He wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning. That we have this fundamental drive to find meaning in our life. It's sort of like it's in our DNA. It isn't something that just some people have. It's sort of part of it. Animals are not plagued with that, for example. I don't think animals are going around going, oh, what's the meaning of this? Why is this bowl that I'm eating out every day round? Shouldn't it be some other shape? I don't think animals are going through that. They're not analyzing everything that's happening and trying to find some deeper meaning, but human beings do, you know, to our detriment, and maybe it helps us in some ways. But nonetheless, that's something that's there, and if we're not finding meaning, then there's something missing in our experience. There's something lacking and it keeps us from being peaceful. But isn't there something else called prediction and control that we kind of like to? I don't know about you. Wouldn't you like to predict and control your life? Oh my God, please. In other people, I like to predict what they're going to do and what she's going to do and what he's going to do and then control them if I don't like their behavior, right? And then there's this thing called cognitive dissonance. You guys know that one? A couple of big words there. And that basically just says that, we all have these beliefs about how things should be, right? And then life shows up a certain way. And the cognitive dissonance is the conflict or the way that things do, the way things don't square with the way they should be, right? When we've done this, I have the storm here many times, at least once anyway, and Denise teaches it all the time, and it all has to do with this notion of, can you be okay with things the way they are? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Or does life have to be a certain way for you to be okay, right? So, I mean, this is really the challenge. This is where, we grow up, we'll develop a level of skill and ability to communicate, and we realize that we have certain control over life, and we navigate through our careers so that we can figure out ways to express ourselves, to earn a living, to manage all of the requirements of the human life. So we have this level of control, and we're instructed to become more skillful at that. So then suddenly we just sort of like hit this ceiling where we can't control something, but the impulse for that still remains, right? So we're bumping up against this innate need for life to be controlled in a certain way, because it's very difficult for us at a human level to be okay when things are not going the way we want them to go. Am I alone in this? No. Oh, okay, good. So let's get into it. Should we get into the spiritual answer here? Because I know you guys will have good ones if I can't come up with any. But I was thinking about this a lot today because, as I said, just watching things unfolding in the world and, just not wanting to go down that rabbit hole of despair, right? Or just feeling like, oh my gosh, we got to change that. We got to change that. Well, what if we can't? So how do we find some kind of equanimity, some kind of peace with life unfolding the way it's going to unfold? Well, the spiritual answer is always a reversal of the problem. And also it's a reversal of our human tendency. Our human tendency wants to go out and attack what we don't like. We want to go change it. We want to go get our garden tools and rip up, the soil of what is and make it into the soil of what we want. And we want to plant what we want to plant, and we want to uproot what we don't like, and we just want to go after it. And by the way, people did a really good job on our landscaping toward that end. They took some things out that were unpleasant and put some things in that are beautiful to look at, and we're grateful for that. But our lives are not quite so formulaic in that way, are they? Darn it, anyway. So the masters, Glenn referenced the masters, all those who we invited into this room here, they all basically had the same message, even if they articulated it differently. They said, Jesus, for example, said, do not judge by what? Appearances. Well, what are appearances? Appearances are all the things that are objective, everything that you can name and look at in life. And appearances can even be so subtle as being thoughts, memories, sensations that you have. All those things are appearances. Well, if you don't judge by all of those things, where are you left with? See, this is where life becomes, as Meister Eckhart said, a process of subtraction. That if we're going to get to that place where we can be okay with life as it's showing up, it's not going to be because we can, play a really good game of whack-a-mole and get knocked down everything that we don't like. Or the circus act where the plates are spinning. You get this one spinning over here. Oh, the relationship. Oh, that's working really well right now. Oh, things, the work, the job, those coworkers. Oh, that's wobbling over here. We think, the surface mind thinks, oh, I'll just keep these plates spinning. And then when they start wobbling, we just have to go back to work again. So we don't even sleep at night because there's so many freaking wobbling plates. And if it's not in our world, it's in the world, right? And then our friends and our family, and oh my God, there's so many wobbling plates out there. We're exhausted. This is judging by appearances. So where are we left? Because if we take away all that's happening out there, right? And we where is there left to look? Inside. It's an inside job. Insiders. Inside. Everyone seen the movie Inside Out? Yeah. It's an animated film that's for adults. I mean, it's for kids, but emotionally intelligent, like way up here. Should be required. Video watching for every age. Anyway, but the point of what the masters are trying to get us to do is to recognize that we make the problem. Oh no, wait a minute, no, I didn't cause that. No. I did not screw up the economy. I'm not that powerful. I didn't cause that cancer. I didn't cause that money problem. I didn't, No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying, when does a situation become a problem? That's what I really want to ask you. When does a situation, this is what is, okay? Someone says, this expression that goes around, it's very popular. Oh, it is what it is. That's true, right? It is what it is. Does that bring you peace? No. And why doesn't it give you peace? Because there's a part of us that still clings to the idea that it shouldn't be as it is. Am I right? Yes. That's my experience. I know this week I had a few of those moments. Oh, no, this shouldn't be happening right here. And what I notice is as soon as I pass judgment on it, it really becomes a problem. Before it was a concern. Now like, no way, something cosmically wrong here. There has been a huge mistake in the universe. There's been a split in the universal intelligence, and somehow, and I don't believe in the devil, but I think something got in here and it's screwing up. Yeah. And so now I'm at war with what is. Now that's a problem, right? Whereas before, it was a situation that I noticed, and I could see, okay, it has implications. It's going to affect people. It's going to affect me. But until I decide that that's unacceptable, in other words, I can't accept that, it really doesn't sit as a problem. Like if your friends come over to you and tell you about their problem, and maybe even something really significant, and you just go, oh, you have compassion and you feel for them, but you don't walk away feeling diminished, most likely, right? Because it's not a problem for you, right? So how do we deal with life so that we don't make the situations in life that are difficult to accept? How do we come to the place where we can be with them and be okay and not be diminished by them? This is the work, a lot of the work of what Denise does, teaches the Q process, which I would commend everybody. It's really changed our experience of life, not because we now have become better manifestors where we can just, re-landscape our life according to our decor, which is, it's handy too. But it's because we can't necessarily change all the events, circumstances, and situations in our life, but we still have to live in the world. So how do we live in the world? And as Jesus said, not be of it. You can be in the world, but not be of it. In other words, you hold on to a sense of your true spiritual reality and then interface with the world at the level of this deeper appreciation of that part of you that is at peace, that can't be disturbed. You can't touch that part of you. You know, who and what we are, which is spiritual, which is, you know, the essence of our very being is a non-physical reality. So the reality of the world cannot reach, touch, diminish, stain, or in any way affect the essence of who and what we are. Do we need to remember this? Do I need to remember this? Amen. Amen. Every day and every way, more and more. So I just want to share a couple of stories, and then we'll have you guys share a little bit. And I may have shared this before, and that's the risk of having me around a lot, because I may start repeating myself. But I had a friend who was a dentist in Puerto Rico, and he was so committed to his practice that he only scheduled one patient per hour. He was really into taking good care of people. And he had been doing this for years, and one day he was working on an AIDS patient. And he had an instrument in his hand, and he was wearing a glove, and the instrument slipped off the tooth, and he poked his hand and went through the glove. And he knew, he said, in that instant, that he had infected himself with the HIV virus. And as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. And he began having symptoms of the disease, and eventually he wasn't able to work anymore, and he had to sell his practice, and he sold his practice, and he remained living for a while in Puerto Rico. But he had this refrain, maybe you can relate to this. He would wake up every morning, he would realize what had befallen him. He now, didn't have a job, couldn't get employed, was very sick. And financially, physically, everything had gone south in his life. And because he was holding his view, like, I've did nothing, but I've really dedicated my life to helping people. The question that's going to come? W-H, why? 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 And he didn't feel any better when he said that, but it was hard for him to get it out of his consciousness. And so he would just, every day, oh my God, why? He was seeking some kind of understanding. There's this part of us that thinks that somehow if we understand things, that it will reduce our suffering. Somehow it'll make sense, and then if it makes sense, then maybe we can accept it. But he wasn't accepting it. He was just saying, why? So he was a spiritual guy, and he was prayed and he meditated, and he was really seeking this answer. And so in one of his meditations, finally after a day, it dawned on him. And as he was meditating, and this question arose, why? A little voice came and it said, don't ask that question anymore. Instead of asking why, ask how. How can you use this to express more of who you really are? And it was like this peace came over him because he changed the impulse. The impulse went from victim to empowerment. So suddenly, before he had a question that couldn't be answered, and he felt vulnerable, weak, and disempowered, and that life was against him. And when he said how, suddenly there was just this opening, that the heart opened, and he was then filled with, how could I use this? I mean, obviously there's other people that are going through what I'm going through right now, so how can I use this? How can I be a champion for something that is essential to me, that has not been changed, diminished, stained, and or any way affected by AIDS? You know what he discovered? The same love that he had brought to his dentistry practice, he now could put into his expression in other ways, with being with other people and being a part of other organizations. And this person, I want you to know, he went on to be the dean of ministry studies at Unity Village. And he wrote 5 books on metaphysics. Not why is this happening to me, but how can I use this to glorify the presence and the power and the love of God? And he was a light. He was in my ministerial class too, in seminary. He was and he was inspiring. We gave a talk or whatever. He was coming from this authentic place of knowing the truth of his being. And he didn't have any great story like, oh, you know, I think good thoughts and everything went well and you can do this too. And it was sort of this new age Pollyanna stuff. He was talking about hitting the depths and then resurrecting his spirit and becoming an expression of that in the world for all to see. And most importantly, he found a new way to live. Not as a victim, but as a victor. Amen. Amen. And then, of course, we got to talk about Jesus, and then we can get. But it's real quick. And Jesus, do you remember the disciples were always asking Jesus, why this, why that, why do you speak in parables, Jesus? And, you know, why? And then, you know, inquiring minds, right? Didn't have the National Enquirer then, so they had to ask Jesus. Why was this man born blind? Ooh, they tried to stump Jesus. And of course, they thought they knew, and they were just testing it. So they said, either this man sinned or his parents did, right? Because that was the thought system that lived at the time. If something bad happens to you, it's because, you know, sort of like a karmic comeuppance, right? So somebody sinned. And Jesus, as he always did, he kind of, you know, turned the tables on him and he said, neither one. Well, this man was born blind, so God could be glorified through him. Think about that. When glorified is sort of, you know, one of those sacred words, but think about it this way. So God could be realized through him. Think about yourself. That's what I want to go to next. Think about a situation in your life right now that, you know, maybe you've been asking why. And really just resisting and not accepting. Maybe it's time for a new insight. Maybe it's your message, it's your moment, like Paul, who said, it's not a good question anymore. The question diminishes me, disempowers me, and keeps me stuck. So I want to know, how can I use this to glorify more of my essential being? Not who I think I am, not the person, the body, mind, character with the biography, but who I was created to be, what I was created to be as a spiritual being, clothed temporarily in this spacesuit, this cloaking device. Anyone have a thought? Glenn.
I think you touched upon something that everybody in this room can relate to. I don't think there's anybody here that hasn't walked upon the floors of despair at one time or another. And now here we are. I mean, we're not asking so much why anymore. We're asking, what can we do now? And you're mirroring that. This is such a blessing. Thank you.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I know a lot of people because we weren't born yesterday, as the expression goes. Do we have a mic we can share? Yeah. This one? Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people here, but I'd love to hear, maybe if it's not happening right now, maybe it's something that you've done, because it's all instructional. We're all ministers unto each other when we share these stories.
Even this sermon today is part of that treasure hunt in life that I'm taking right now, and just taking one step back from what my concern is. And as though I'm looking down on myself, I wonder what she's going to do next. Like how is to me central to what you've been speaking about. And just that one little step back, it becomes a very interesting journey to see who might say something that's helpful. Or yesterday I came to the Jeshua session, and it was as though I was giving marching orders, and it was part of the how for me is to notice when somebody else is in need and think, how can I help them? And it brings me again right around to that this is an interesting journey. And there's the initial shock of whatever seems overwhelming, but then
Sure.
Everything's such a joy. Like what you're speaking about today is so helpful to me. And then it does glorify God because it's so poignant and it seems so well suited to myself. But I think your truths are universal. So probably every person in here is going bing, 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 and
For sure.
that we're together in this journey is also so valuable.
Good. Gosh, you're quieter today than usual. Contemplative.
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you for the talk, because sometimes we do forget. And we remember sometimes a dozen times a day, and then we forget.
Yeah.
Something else comes up. And the one thing I can think of is the message that we're giving to the people around us and work, at home, in the community, in the neighborhood. And if I'm uttering out negative thoughts, or I can't take this anymore, or whatever it is, then we're forgetting who we are. And I want not to put that kind of energy out there. We want to put the kind of energy that says, in chaos, in turmoil, in uncertainty, I can trust and know that any story we have that starts with a victim, and maybe we were, can turn into the hero or the heroine. How do I turn that around? How do I move forward? How do I move out of it? And your message just reminds me that I could kick my butt this week a few times, but because I've said the things that was not who I am or what I really believe, but I got caught up in the mess. Yeah. And you have to just stop and remember and pray, or sit and meditate and just relax and trust and surrender to all possibilities in the chaos, because chaos is a course change. We're going through a course change, and it's always at its worst when it gets better, just before it gets better. So
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, thank you.
For me, it's when you were talking about why. I've been saying for the last 2 years, it's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to happen this way. And so I started asking the how question recently, trying to get back to some of my spiritual practices, which I had let go of. And I wasn't sleeping well this whole, it was really hard to just kind of settle in. And so what came to me was the little book that was laying by my bed, which was the booklet that was put about about the prayer for protection. And I used that when my son was born a lot, when I would go away from him and I would say it and I'd see his little face. And I started using that at night now to go to sleep, to let go of the not supposed to. And it's working very well. Thank you for your talk today.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. And some of those, I mean, you think about the prayer for protection, I mean, couldn't be any closer to us, right? We all have access to it. If you've forgotten, just watch a video from last week, but I mean, it's like sort of that shifting, we get in a rut and all we see is the problem, and it's some of what will just, lift us up so that we can see that rarefied air, of truth. Whatever does that for us. I mean, even if it's petting your cat or just going out into nature where nature deals with all of its conflicts in a very harmonious way. We can even observe that and just say, wait a minute, there's a way through this. It may not be the way I think, but yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on your example of, why was this man born blind?
Yeah.
And it's to glorify God. But the question is, well, how does that glorify God? And we've often asked Joshua, why an example of a child coming in and having a deformity or a disease or whatever, that child that doesn't deserve that. Why? I mean, my daughter was born with a head deformity, and I got a lot of why is that in your family? Whose family is it? All of that stuff. But what Joshua has told us is that we're here to serve each other, and when we serve, by serving each other, that means all those people that then help with the healing, they wouldn't have had a job and couldn't fulfill their purpose of service if there weren't any volunteers to take on the deformities or whatever, the blindness or the whatever. If there weren't volunteers to have that condition, all the rest of us wouldn't be able to serve and fulfill our part of healing. So that's part of our oneness of serving each other. And once I got that message, there was a relief of peace that my daughter is serving this community, and she's gone on to help other people, and I went on to help others who had that same condition for their children. And it turned out beautifully.
Yeah.
But as long as I was stuck in the, why, who's at fault? It's like, God, it's a birth defect. Did I eat the wrong chocolate? What? That must have been it. And as long as that was part of it, it was very painful.
Painful, and you're like kind of sort of stuck, right? Instead
Right.
of, as soon as you realize that maybe this is something that this can be something that I can be an act of purpose and meaning. The meaning now doesn't come from what happened. The meaning comes from what I do with this.
Exactly.
And then I can be a voice for,
Yeah,
not why, but a voice for how more love can be expressed in the world.
exactly. And think about the parents of the shooting victims of the children who've been killed and how they've gone on to transform themselves and their society and become advocates for, more positive ways of dealing with life.
Yes.
So anyway.
Beautiful. And that's,
Thank you.
it's not just this Pollyannish sort of mind candy, let's just flip it, and make it a positive thing. It needs to be authentic. In other words, we really do need to ask, how can I use this? And not just, I'm just going to decide that it's all good, which is sort of a spiritual bypass, right? Where you just sort of claim the good without actually having an authentic direction from spirit as to how this can be something that can be translated into an act of love or an act of true service. And we had friends in Davis who they had their son was a Down syndrome, and Dave was his name, And he was in our congregation, and every Sunday he would get up and he would say, I want to sing happy birthday to everybody, every Sunday. I want to sing happy birthday, everybody. And he sang it, and the joy and the gleam was coming out of his eyes, and we just all just embraced it, you know. And he passed finally after, I think he was about 30 years old, and his parents wrote to me, and they said, you know, Dave came to us, and we wondered why, you know, naturally for parents. And he said, he came to teach us about unconditional love. Now, that's not a bad thing at all. And they were beautiful people. They just exuded that love. So, anyway, should we do a little meditation and then we'll. Sorry, that started as an idea for us. I think we'll skip the video just because of the time. Yeah. So let's just take a moment to breathe into this space that we've created here that is filled with possibility. And open our hearts and our minds to a deeper understanding that may escape the surface mind. That life as it unfolds, that it is, the situations, that circumstances that might confound us at one level. Let's open the ears of our heart that we might hear something more profound, more deep, more assuring that although it may be a problem at the level of form, in truth, there is nothing missing, broken, or not working. Because there's no way that there can be anything missing in the truth of us. We are whole and complete. We are as God created us, perfect, whole, and free. And that's true for all 8 billion of us and those creatures and animals that make up the trillions that occupy this planet. In other words, there is an essential truth and there's an essential wholeness that's here. It's in us. It is us. And so I'm reminded of a scripture, I think it's in the book of Kings, where Elijah was invited to go and stand out from the mountain before the Lord would be passing by. And Elijah stood before the mountain. And there was a great wind, a strong wind, and it shattered the mountains and cracked the rocks around him. But God was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was a great earthquake. But God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But God was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was simply silence. And in the silence, there is a knowing that can reveal its truth to us. Let's sit here quietly for a moment. So we thank you, Spirit, that you guide us on this journey of letting go who we think we are and how life is supposed to be, and helping us reveal, uncover, and express who we really are and how we can express more of that truth, love, and peace in this world, on earth, as it is in the mind of God. For this we are called, and for this we say yes. And so it is. Amen.